Good evening. My name is Emeka Obara. Welcome to another episode of Connecting the Dots. Today we have the pleasure of talking to Abba Aliyu, who is the head PMU at the Nigeria Electrification Project. And the topic of today's conversation is stories of impact for Nigerian Electrification Project. So just to paint a picture of what has been going on over the past few years at NEP is part of REA, and it's also been funded by the World Bank and the African Development Bank. The project aims to provide electricity access to off-grid communities across the country. In this episode, we'll explore a collection of positive outcomes and challenges from various projects implemented under NEP. We'll also delve into real-life accounts of communities and institutions that have experienced transformative changes and improvements through NEP initiatives. From schools to rural and urban centers, will shed light on the social and economic progress, ultimately reflecting the success and potential of NEP in shaping Nigeria's energy and economic landscape. It'll be my pleasure to welcome Abba to the program. Abba, welcome.
Thank you very much, Emeka. Thank you for having me. Appreciate inviting me to this important podcast. Thank you.
Excellent, sir. So just to get into it, could you just give us a quick background of who you are and the journey so far in the power sector?
Thank you. Quickly, I've had 15 years of experience in the power sector, starting with the on-grid. My experience in the power sector started with working with the Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, popularly known as MBET. I started as the head of human resources and admin, then later on became a general manager of corporate services. Later on moved to the general manager project research and statistics. I also spent 2 years as the SA to the former Minister of Power before returning back to MBET. Then later on I also moved back to the Nigerian Electrification Project as the head of the project management unit. That is currently the role I'm occupying.
Thank you, sir. And in that role, one of the key drivers or the key objectives is to improve energy access. Access is obviously a problem given that half of the country, roughly 100 plus million people, do not have access to electricity. And some of us that do have access don't have enough access, right? So how does NEP differ from all the other efforts that have been made? What are some of the unique opportunities it has done to be able to transform some of the communities it's currently working in?
Thank you. Quite all right. The Nigeria Electrification Project, popularly known as NEP, it's quite unique. It's a model first of its kind in the country and even in the continent. And what distinguishes NEP from other projects in the electricity space, one, it is designed to be a private sector driven. Key among it is that it's evolved around incentivizing the private sector developers to come to the electricity space and invest so that to create this access. That is one uniqueness. The second uniqueness is that it is a results-based framework specifically designed where incentive of a grant and subsidy it's been provided or paid to developers after achieving certain level of deliverables. So that is unique, that is key. If you look at all other projects within the space, are not necessarily results oriented, but NEP is designed to specifically be incentive for performance. That is second. The third aspect of it is also the way the corporate governance for the implementation of NEP is designed. It's designed in such a way that it has a corporate governance that incentivize or that facilitate transparency, integrity, and accountability. So on one hand, we have the Rural Electrification Agency as the implementation agency, and you have a project management unit also equipped with technical competency to implement the project. We have also a grant administrator, private company with an international reputation that also focuses in the administration of the grants being paid in one of the components that we implement. We also have an independent verification agent, also enshrined in the corporate governance, that plays a role in determining the implementation of the project and also making recommendation for the payment of the grant or subsidy. That is another aspect that is unique. Then the last uniqueness of the NEP is to do with the way the components are designed, that is the entire project. It has different components. Each of the components has specific target assigned to it for implementation. So for example, we have a component of the mini solar mini grid component. Under it, we have a specific component called performance-based grant, and we have another one called minimum subsidy tender, all within under the framework of results-based performance framework. Then we have another component called the solar home system design. Under it, we have the OPF, output based fund, which is also a result based component designed to also achieve specific targets, looking at the uniqueness of the communities that do not have this access. Then we have another component called the energizing education, which is an EPC base that was designed to have maximum impact in our tertiary education. Another one component that also focuses in the health sector that try to provide access in primary health centers and even the tertiary health centers, teaching hospital. The uniqueness of NEP is also in terms of the way the project was designed to have specific components, each one focusing on a particular area with specific targets towards achieving it.
That's really unique because most programs you hear of are very singular focused. Coordinators of NEP had the foresight to be able to split it up in different components, and it's probably one of the stories of why NEP is able to run in the pace that it's been running and be the example it has been in the power sector. Because as most people know, REA pre-2016, you were in the sector, was not a place to be, but now REA is one of the places where most people who finish from school and who know about the sector want to go to because of the work that has been done there. One of the components of NERC has objective to provide cost-effective power to 250 medium and small enterprises and 1 million households through off-grid and mini-grid systems by the end of this year. What's the progress on that, and has that been achieved?
Yeah, okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the way it's been designed, each component has specific set of targets to achieve, and as you rightly said, one of the targets is household, the micro, medium, and small enterprises as well. I'm happy to say that in some areas we have surpassed the target that has been assigned. For example, under the solar home system, I'm proud to say that we have surpassed the target. We have deployed over 1.4 million solar house home. For the mini grid component, we have deployed 86 mini grids with over 26,000 connections.
Wow.
Some of them covers micro, small and medium enterprises as well. In terms of even the entire impact, we estimate that the impact of all our project of NEP has surpassed 6 million individuals. So in terms of achievement in that regard, yes, we have most of the components, we have surpassed the target. What we are currently implementing, which we are working tirelessly to ensure we deliver within the time frame, is the Energizing Education Program, the phase 2. We are currently implementing that in 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals. That is currently that we are, and we have a set target to complete those projects. But we also have the African Development Bank funded side of the NEP, which also we are currently implementing the Energizing Education Phase 3. We just received the tenders in response to the procurement advert that has been done and presently working on evaluating. So in most of the areas, yes, we set the target and we surpass those targets component by component.
That's really different to hear, right? The perception of government is that things don't work. Don't worry about it, it won't get done. But it's really impressive to hear that things are moving forward. The next point is around sustainability, because there's an issue we have in Nigeria where projects are designed, they're created, and if you come back and check the next 6 months, the project is not in the same level it was at when it was commissioned, because it's not maintained. So it's almost like a lack of a maintenance culture we have in the country. Have you been able to overcome that? If so, please share.
Yeah, so one key thing with sustainability from the NEP perspective is planning with the end in mind. So sustainability is being built in all our projects from the conceptualization stage of the project. So for example, when a developer comes in, before we evaluate his submission, which would lead to signing of a grant agreement, there are a number of key sustainability factors that we looked into, one of which, for example, is the environmental and social community engagement, stakeholder engagement. These are key factors that oftentimes ignored, but they in fact greatly in the sustainability of the project. That is one aspect. The second aspect, like I mentioned there, is building the project around the private sector. So it's not a government-owned project or a government-implemented project, but we create an enabling environment and incentivize the private sector with grant and subsidy to deliver the project. And by this, it's enshrining, it means building a great aspect of sustainability, which means that the private sector on the project and bring in their own capital equity into the project. And that means that for them to achieve some level of returns means that they have to keep the project working over a period of time. So that is a key thing, sustainability aspect that we build in. The third and the most critical also aspect is the productive use of equipment as a sustainability factor also that we built, where we also incentivize equipment suppliers to also bring sustainable equipment and deploy them within the communities. So in all the communities, you will see that it's not just us creating access, but also transforming the socio-economic condition of the communities by providing incentives to equipment suppliers to provide equipment that will be linked to this mini grid, thereby enhancing the economic returns of the mini grid to the developer, and at the same time also in transforming the socio-economic condition of the communities. So these are part of the things that we built into to ensure sustainability of our projects.
That's great. So it sounds like the whole value chain is sorted out, right? Because if you have things that are designed for different components, and if you have the sustainability part taken care of, it sounds like there'll be different phases of NEP, right? This won't be the only part of NEP, that there'll be other parts of NEP. And as a sector practitioner, I've seen different stories and different articles on what NEP is doing and the impact it's had in various communities. Maybe for this episode, let's focus on the agro sector. Could you highlight some stories around how your contractors or your team members met a community and how the NEP project was able to transform that community, both from a social point of view and also from an economic point of view?
Yeah, so one of the key things we do is before deploying any project within the community, part of the key requirement is to have a baseline data of where the community is, and that data compared to the data after the deployment of the project speaks a lot in terms of the kind of transformation that such projects impact in the communities. A number of projects, just recently the vice president of the World Bank came and had to go to one of our projects just to look by herself to see the project and have a feel of the impact of the NEP project. And there's one near Abuja. I encourage all interested parties to have a visit there. It's in a community called Kilankwa under Kwali, about 60 kilometers away from Abuja. We have about 4 mini grids in those communities. If you go there, you will see how an agrarian community that did not have any access and we don't have a way to preserve their agricultural product. But after the deployment of the mini grid within that community, they have a way now of preserving their agricultural product. And beyond that, also creating some commercial activities. You will see a woman that has a freezer who initially, before she has to go very far to buy ice block for her soft drink that she sells. But with the deployment of the mini grid now, that has saved her the cost of going to buy the ice block, the cost of buying the ice block, the cost of transportation. She now has, her shop is connected to the mini grid. Even in terms of the community, you will see, for example, a public borehole that's connected to the mini grid that provide water to the entire community. You will see a primary school within the community also connected to the mini grid. So you can see how exactly those transformations are there. One interesting thing also that I saw is the number of street lights connected to the mini grid. In the night when we were passing there, I saw a number of students reading under the street light. So you can see how such mini grid bring socio-economic transformation within that, and that impact education, health, commerce, community services, and other areas.
What's really fascinating about this agricultural space is a stat that I knew back in the day was, I think, 60% of 40% of tomatoes in Nigeria is wasted, and it's not wasted because of anything else other than storage and processing. So it's really interesting, and it's really fantastic that we're able to get fruit freezers out and also get productive use equipment for the farmers to be able to preserve these crops. I'll get you out of here on this last point around when we talk about the power sector. As you know, you've been in the sector for the last 15 years. There's always a bit of a shift and always a bit of perception around that the sector is a male-dominated space. I've been to NEP a few times, and I've done a couple engagements with NEP, and from what I see, NEP has done an exemplary job in bringing in qualified women who know their onions. How have you been able to do that, both on the contractor side and also on the staff side, and what are some of the lessons learned that we can take away for the other parts of the sector?
Yeah, so gender inclusion is a critical element in NEP, and this is also driven as a result of how the funders, African Development Bank and the World Bank, also give priority to gender inclusion. In our evaluation process, for example, a developer has to provide us with gender inclusion policy, which is a key requirement that if you don't have it, we may not pass you through the evaluation process for us to sign a grant agreement. So it's a key requirement. So from the beginning, we want to make sure that we send a signal that whoever we are dealing with has gender inclusion a key priority. That is one. Two, we go to the extent of incentivizing gender inclusion in our program. The productive use of equipment under the African Development Bank, we incentivize developers with a baseline incentive of 30% as cost of incentive. However, if that developer has met a particular threshold of gender inclusion, you will get additional 10%. That is a deliberate means of incentivizing gender inclusion in the way we do things. Within NEP is just leading by example. So if we are going to ensure that the developers in the communities, there is gender inclusion, gender prioritization, gender consciousness, Why shouldn't we not do that? And that is why you will find within NEP also we have more females than male within the NEP, and that is to ensure that we practice what we preach. So gender inclusion is a key requirement and is something of great importance for us in NEP and in the projects that we implement.
Interesting. I like how you said that it's what you practice, what you preach, right? That's something a number of agencies in the sector need to do a better job of. And I was at the stakeholder meeting last week, 90% male. So it's something that we have to resolve.
Exactly.
So finally, what's the horizon for NEP over the next 2 years as a short run, and then obviously 5 to 10 years in the long run?
So based on the project appraisal document that was signed by the federal government, NEP on the World Bank component of the NEP supposed to end in October. However, working with the Federal Ministry of Finance, the MD of Nigeria Electrification Agency has secured an approval to extend the World Bank component by 9 months. This is to provide an opportunity to complete the energizing education program that I told you that we are still working on. And the MD also secured an approval for the extension of the African Development Bank component, which started late 2 years. This is to provide also opportunity for the component to complete the energizing education phase 3 and also implement the minimum subsidy tender that is just being completed, also that the procurement process just being completed. So that is on this side. On another side, also based on the success recorded by NEP, the REA and the federal government is thinking around another offshoot of the project, popularly known as DARE, distributed access to through renewable energy solution. That is much more ambitious project that aims to create access to the 14% of the total Nigerian population. However, this is at the early stage. Nothing is being done. The federal government is thinking around it. If the federal government decides to go around it, then definitely it will be another mega impactful project that will provide access in the most cost-effective way to the 14% of the Nigerians that do not have access, and that will be the biggest project in not only off-grid funded project, not only in Africa but in the entire world. So we look forward to that.
That's great news. I think the thing with Nigeria that we've all come to understand is we do things differently. Most people privatize one part of the sector first, then they do the other. We did both at the same time. So having the biggest project in the world doesn't surprise me. Thank you again for the time. This has been a very useful conversation. It's interesting that you spent some time on the on-grid side and you're now on the off-grid side. So hopefully we can learn some things from some of the work that you've done at NEP. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. We hope we've been able to provide insights into the NEP world, and I'm hoping that I can secure Abba back here for more conversations, because there's a number of areas we didn't get a chance to touch on. Thank you again and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.